Okay guys, buckle your seatbelts because I'm about to tell you the most insane story time ever. And before I even get into it, I'm just gonna address this because yes, I'm drinking wine with a straw because I'm filming videos and I don't want it to get all over my teeth. And I know people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, she is so unclassy. And she is bad for the environment too. I would never be like her. Guys, I need this for the story. You will understand shortly. Trust me. This story takes place 8 years ago. I was 22 years old and I was in New York City with Blair for a work trip. I do not remember what we were doing there, but I do remember we were staying in Chinatown. So we were walking home after meetings to our hotel room one night, and it was me and Blair and our agent at the time, who, for the sake of this video, we are going to call her Ashley. As we were walking to our hotel, we passed by a psychic shop. And we thought, whoa, let's be wild tonight. Let's get our palms read. When I said we walked by a psychic shop, you probably got an image in your head, and it was probably completely correct. We're talking neon letters, crystal balls, tarot cards, like the whole psychic shabam. And we were like, this is great. Let's do this. We thought that it was just gonna be so spontaneous and fun. And I had actually never had a reading up until this point, like never done anything like that. So I thought, oh, this is gonna be fun. So I remember we walked up to the front door and the psychic lady met us at the door and she said that we needed to come in one at a time. So Ashley went first. She walked in. We waited on the street, which is like kind of weird. Me and Blair were just like hanging on the street for 20 minutes. And Ashley's in there like getting her reading. She comes out 20 minutes later and she's all smiles and she talks about how her career is going to be like really fabulous. It seemed really normal, like your normal run-of-the-mill psychic who could be anyone, who probably isn't legit. I mean, we knew that going in. I fully expected this to be a very generalized reading. I did not put much stock into it. The thing with me is like, I don't not believe in that stuff, but I do disbelieve that we're gonna stumble across a random neon signed psychic shop and it's gonna be real. Although if you watch movies, you know that a lot of times you will stumble into situations through fate that you're meant to go through, which like, I don't even want to think about that based on what comes later in the story. I go second. I walk into this psychic shop and it was a square shaped room, and I have to kind of explain the setup so that you can be like in the ambiance and the feel with me of the story. So when you walked in, on the far back wall, it was floor to ceiling, thick velvet curtains in like a dark jewel tone, like a dark purple, and it hid whatever was behind it. I don't know if it was a wall. I don't know if it was like more rooms, like maybe where she lived. I don't know if there were people back there. Like, I have no idea what was behind that curtain. And then there were also curtains on the front wall, so opposite of the back wall, in like behind the window setups that had the crystal balls and the crystals. There were these curtains, so when you were inside of the building, you couldn't see outside onto the street and you couldn't see inside to the psychic building. You just saw like the little crystals and like little window setups. So when you were in there, you were completely by yourself with this lady. No one could see you. It was very dark in there. We sit down and she takes my palm and she's looking at my palm. And in my head, I was thinking, okay, I know from like reading and from movies that a lot of times what these psychics will do is they feed off of your answers and your energy. So if they start leading you down a path based on how you respond, that's how they figure out like what you want to hear and stuff. So I thought to myself, I'm gonna be a poker face. Like, I'm not gonna give anything away and this is gonna be real legit. And after like a few seconds, I realized that it's been like kind of a while that she's been staring at my palm, and she starts referencing this big old book she has that's on like this other table. So she's like going back and forth, looking at the book, looking at my hand. She started to get a little bit more frantic as she was comparing my palm to this book that she had, and I just thought this was very like overdone. Like, I was just kind of like literally twiddling my thumbs waiting for her to say something, and all of a sudden she comes out with literally the last thing I expected her to say ever. She goes, "You have a black magic curse on you." Hold on. I have a what? She says, "It was put on to you by an ex-boyfriend." And she said, "The first one that came to your mind when I said that, that's the one that did it." And of course there was someone that came to my mind, as they do. And she said, "I'm really feeling like it was in the South, maybe Florida." And I'm like, oh, freaking no way. Because this ex-boyfriend that had come to my mind was an ex that I had in Florida. My mind started reeling at this point, and I started thinking like, I wonder if Ashley had said something in her reading that would have connected us to Florida. But then that didn't really make sense because we've never actually lived in Florida. So if she had said Georgia or Tennessee, I would have thought, oh, Ashley mentioned that we were from there. But Florida was kind of like out of nowhere. So that was the first thing that made me think, like, I started to get a little bit nervous, but also like I still was like pretty skeptical about this whole thing, if I'm being honest. She then tells me that she can remove this curse, but if she doesn't remove it, I will never fall in love. And you guys, like, I was single at the time, and I was just thinking like, I didn't believe it, but I also didn't want to risk, like, I didn't want to be that cliche in a movie where this like good, well-meaningful psychic is trying to give you advice and you're ignoring it, and everyone in the audience watching the movie is like, you're so dumb, I totally would have listened. I didn't want to be that girl. So then I was kind of like, well, maybe I should just do what she says. Maybe it'll be easy. Maybe she'll just be like, the curse is lifted, and that will be it, and I'll pay her an extra $10. Like, those are the things going through my head. So she says, I can lift this for you, but you're gonna have to come back tomorrow and bring me this list of things that I need in order to do this ceremony. Here's the thing. I don't mess with that kind of stuff. I don't not believe in it. I have never seen anything specifically other than this story that would make me believe in it necessarily, but I do believe that we don't know everything that's out there, and I am not going to be someone who sits here and says like, that definitely doesn't exist. Like, who knows what's out there, you know? But what I do know is I don't mess with it. I don't try to put myself in situations where I'm going to be doing ceremonies around black magic curses. At this point, I was kind of nervous, and actually I was a little bit scared, if I'm being honest, because I started to realize that this was like not a normal reading and that it was getting very intense. And I definitely regretted at that moment even walking into this thing. I was just like, this is something that I wish that I had just never done. Like, I just like don't know what to do. Then she says the thing that cinched the deal, you guys. I'm not making this up. She goes, if you let me lift this curse, you will meet your next relationship in 2 days. 2 days. 2 days. I was on vacation in New York. I don't even live there. She said 2 days, you will meet your next relationship, which like I didn't believe at all. But also I like kind of did because of the situation that I was in and the ambiance and the mood and like everything. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna come back the next day with whatever she needs and just get this taken care of, because I don't know, like I just don't know. I don't want to never fall in love. She tells me that I need to bring a crystal bowl made out of real crystal, a wooden chest, and 3 long-stemmed white-budded flowers of different types. Just telling this story, just like, but in the moment I was like so scared. Like I was writing everything down. I like had a curse on me. Like I didn't know what was going on. I was 22 years old. I finish up with her. I go outside and it's Blair's turn. So she goes in and I'm telling Ashley what happened. And she is just like flabbergasted. She's like, that is literally the most insane thing I've ever heard. What are you gonna do? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna like deal with it tomorrow. So then when Blair came out of her reading, of course, her reading was normal too. Like, what is it about me that made, unless maybe the curse was real, I don't know. But what was it about me that made the lady like do this whole thing? So anyway, Blair comes out and she's all like fine with everything. I start telling her all of this stuff and she's like, you have to take care of this. Like, you gotta do something about this right now. She was like, if it was me, I would want you to help me take care of it. So tomorrow we're gonna go and we're gonna get all these things and we're gonna come back and we're gonna take care of this. Like, she was very like on top of it and aggressive almost about this whole thing. So I was like, okay, let's do it. So the next day rolls around and you guys, it took us the entire day to source these items. You would not think it would be that hard to find a crystal bowl and a wooden chest in New York City, but when you like don't live there, you don't really know where to go. It was not a super easy thing to find these things. So anyway, it took us the whole day. And we start going to look for this psychic place that evening and we have like all of our items. And I remember like we couldn't find it at first. And of course, like my crazy mind was immediately like, it's not real. It doesn't exist. We're never gonna find it. Like that is the mindset I was in. Like I thought this whole thing was just insane. And I was convinced we were never gonna find this lady again. She was gonna be gone, like that one Are You Afraid of the Dark episode with the tent and the lady with the weird thing on her face. And like, I just was convinced that she didn't even exist. And no, obviously she existed. So we eventually found her and we walked in, and I was fully expecting her to like not expect us or like think that I was never gonna come back, just because like if you were running a con and you were doing this to a lot of people, a lot of them probably would not come back. Wrong. No, she like fully knew we were gonna come back. She was expecting us. She had like cleared her schedule, and we walk in. No, I take that back. I walk in because as we get there, she meets us at the door and she says, only you can come in. Your sister has to stay on the street, which the night before was okay because there were 2 people on the street, but then it was only Blair. And like, this was not the best part of town. And it was kind of in this alleyway and it was dark outside. And like, I don't know why we even did this and why we didn't just put our foot down right there. But we were like, okay. So I went into this building and Blair stayed on the street. And I feel like I didn't really start getting super scared until this moment. I realized all of a sudden it hit me like, you are in New York City and you are inside of this building alone, and your sister is on the street alone, and you guys can't see each other because of these curtains that are covering the window. And you have no idea if there are more people in here. Like, you've come back to this location. She could like stab me with something that like makes me pass out and sell me into like slavery. Like, all of these things started going through my head, and I started getting really panicky. All of a sudden, I was like convinced that this was all a scam to like kidnap us. Turns out Blair was on the street having the exact same thoughts and just sobbing out there, and I had no idea, bless her heart. So she's on the street crying, convinced that I'm being kidnapped inside and convinced she's about to be kidnapped. And you might think like, you girls are being so dramatic, this is not a big deal. But you have to understand that we were in a city we don't live in not a very nice area, in an alleyway, separated at night. And we've come back to this location where people knew we were gonna come back. It just, all of a sudden it felt very unsafe. And I don't know why I didn't just step out at that moment, but I didn't. This could have ended very differently and very badly. So like, thank goodness that it didn't. Okay, so this lady takes me over to the table and we sit down. She takes the crystal bowl and she fills it with this pitcher of water that she had ready. And she takes my hand and she's like having my hand hover above the water, and she starts chanting something. And the one thing I remember is it was not satanic or like witchy or devilish. It didn't sound like we were getting into like something that I didn't want to mess with. It was very generic. It was like, lift this blackness from this girl and let her be on her way, something like that. It was something like really not very scary. So even though my adrenaline was pumping and I was kind of nervous, I was like, oh, okay, this is really chill. So we're sitting there and my hand is over this bowl and she's chanting this thing about leaving me alone. And all of a sudden, you guys, I am not making this up. Like, I promise you this happened. People are not gonna believe this, but the water turned red. You guys, the water turned red. Okay, and since then, like, little side note, since then I've done research on how this could possibly have happened, and there are a lot of ways that she could have made this happen. She could have dropped food coloring in it. There could have been a tablet already in the water that was in the pitcher that had some sort of time release red dye thing. There are things that could have happened, okay? So like, I'm not saying that that it turned into blood or anything, but it was very intense in the moment. So the water turns red and she takes the 3 white budded long-stemmed flowers. I remember there was a rose, a tulip, and I don't remember what the third one was. And she cut the stems off and she put the flowers in the water so they were like floating on top. And she was talking about like pulling the black magic into the flowers of purity or something. I don't know. So she takes the bowl and she pours the water into the wooden chest, and she hands the chest to me. It was like yay big. She hands it to me and she says, you are gonna have to bury this now. Lady, where the heck am I going to bury this wooden chest in New York City? It's not like we're in the Midwest where I can go home to my big old farm in the backyard and like dig up some dirt and no one's gonna arrest me. Like, am I gonna go to Central Park with this chest of blood water and bury it? Am I gonna take it home on the airplane, go through TSA with my black magic blood water? Like, no. All of a sudden she says the thing that convinced me she was a total fraud. She goes, oh, I can do it for you for $200. This whole fraud has like come around in a circle and now I understand what's happening. Like all of a sudden I saw through this lady. She was just after my $200 and that's what all this was about. And it sucks that I was pulled into it, but whatever, I'm gonna go on my merry way and like never fall for this again. That's what I was thinking. That's not what happened. I think in that moment she saw what was going through my head, which was fraud, fraud, fraud. And she goes, actually, she said, I'll do it for free, but make me a promise that if this curse is lifted and if you do in fact meet your next relationship in one day, because that would have been 2 days from the first time she said 2 days, if you meet your next relationship tomorrow, you will donate $200 to any church anonymously. And I thought, you know what, if I do actually meet someone I'm gonna date tomorrow and all this was real, like I will gladly donate money to a church anonymously. At this point, I left and I met up with Blair outside and Blair was like sobbing, crying, and I was like, what happened? But like really she was just sitting there convinced I was being kidnapped in the other room, which I wasn't. And so she and I walked back to the hotel and I kind of told her everything that happened and she was like, that's nuts. Why are you gonna meet someone tomorrow? Like you don't live in New York City and we're literally not doing anything tomorrow. Like where are you gonna meet this person and all of this stuff? You guys, people are not gonna believe me. I freaking met my next relationship the next day. I'm not even kidding. This story would not be a story if these things didn't happen. It would have just been like this weird like time at a psychic. No, the fact that this happened makes this story. You guys, I met my next relationship the next day and he ended up being the worst relationship of my entire life. I have never in my life had a worse relationship than this person I met the next day. And I started replaying what happened and she didn't tell me I was gonna fall in love in 2 days. She told me that I wouldn't fall in love if I didn't lift the curse, but if I did lift the curse, I would meet a relationship in 2 days. And I did, and he was terrible. So now I'm happily married and I have a baby and I'm like so happy with my love life and everything. And it's so crazy to think that like maybe that would have never happened if I hadn't had this run-in, but also then I wouldn't have had this really terrible relationship. And I think like maybe she put a curse on me with the next relationship, and then I think maybe that was like penance for like lifting the curse, like my like pay for having the curse lifted was like having to go through this relationship. I don't know. All I know is that this was the most crazy thing that's ever happened to me. I did donate the $200. I did in fact seal up this entire experience in a bow. I just wanted everything to be tied up so that if there really was something going on, it wouldn't like not be finished, you know? I did do that. I kept my promise. But guys, this whole situation like makes me so nervous to even think about and like bring this up again. Like I have never been to a psychic since, and I probably never will again because it was such a traumatic experience for me. And even though I'd like to think that she was just this really good-willed person who genuinely was able to lift something off of me that would have been very detrimental to my life. And in that case, like literally the story could be a movie, but I don't know. I know that you guys watching are going to have opinions and you're either going to believe it or you're not, or you're going to like have feelings about whether it was real or whether it wasn't, or whether it was all coincidences. And I honestly don't know what to tell you. I just wanted to tell the story because it does make for a fun story. It just wasn't as fun to actually be the one living it. I thought it would make for a fun story. So hope you guys enjoyed listening to this story. If you did, make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell to be notified, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, do all those things. And I will see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.